Union, that's the AU, the EU rather, has banned the purchase, the import, as well as the transfer of gold from Sudan, saying that the trade has become a major source of funding for the country's civil war, which erupted in April of 2023. In a statement, the EU says the measures are aimed at cutting off financial support for the conflict, as well as increasing pressure on those fueling the war. Now, the move comes amid growing international calls for external backers of the conflict to withdraw, as humanitarian agencies estimate that more than 28 million people across Sudan are facing acute hunger as a result of the conflict. For more on this, we are now joined on the line by Kenneth Kgwadi, a political scientist, research fellow at the Middle East Africa Research Institute. A very good afternoon to you, Kenneth, and thank you so much for your time. Before we go into the implications and the significance of this particular ban, perhaps let's take a moment to reflect on how this conflict has been devastating parts of Sudan.
Good afternoon to you, Unathi, and to the listeners. This conflict, which started around April 2023, it has been devastating and it disrupted the human life in Sudan. And in Africa, it has not really captured much of the attention as it has done in Asia as well as in the Western democracies. We see the US have also attempted to come up with some measures, some sanctions against the leaders of RSF. And then we've also seen the fact-finding mission from the United Nations, which they undertook recently, where they investigated and they found that there have been some gross humanitarian crisis, especially committed by the RSF as well as the army there, the legitimate army in Sudan. So this is just the recent measures on top of many others which have been taken by other bodies and other countries, especially the United Nations as well as the United States of America.
Yeah. So when we look at the EU, decision to ban, and we look at the statement, I mean, it says it's banning the purchase, the import, the transfer of gold from Sudan. How far then do you think that this ban will go in as far as seeing a difference here? I mean, will it have any impact on, for instance, the financing of the conflict, or are there other sources financing this conflict?
Unathi, it's meant those who engineered those measures, they were meaning for that to have some effects on the ground in Sudan. But when you look at it, the practicality aspect, you can realize that it might not have the impact that they are hoping for, because much of the gold that is being extracted in Sudan is not being sold or traded in a more legitimate or genuine ways. They are using illicit manner to extract gold from Sudan and sell it to the point that it reaches one of the world's biggest global hub, which is in Dubai. So I don't think that it is going to have that much impact, but it is meant to at least make sure that both those who have got more influence on the ground, who are causing this humanitarian crisis in Sudan, they don't have the deeper pockets to sustain the current conflict in Sudan. But I don't think that it is going to have much influence. We've seen also this week that the court in Sudan have sentenced the leader of RSF, Hemeti. They have sentenced him to death. But that sentence in its own, it cannot be implemented because it was even taken in absentia of Hemeti. So it will be difficult for some of these measures to be implemented, because currently in Sudan there's chaos because there's conflict that is taking place. So it will be difficult to try and stop the conflict or manage that conflict.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that has been raised not only by the EU, but we know there's been growing calls on the international front for external backers of this conflict to withdraw, just given the humanitarian crisis as just one part. We know, of course, that the EU has also adopted a resolution calling for the United Arab Emirates to be held accountable for allegedly supporting the RSF. To what extent do we know the full extent of who these backers are, and also how effective will this ban have on them, given that we've had, similar sanctions in the past in other conflict zones?
It will, I mean, there have been many critics of the UAE who've been very outspoken about their position that the UAE is one of the major funders of the current conflict. They are the ones who are sponsoring the RSF with weapons and then with money to sustain the logistics that are needed in the conflict. So the EU and others also they are from that background that the UAE is having an invisible hand in the current conflict. So it will obviously have an impact in the current war in Sudan when the West are taking a different posture to that of the UAE. So what we know now is that it is all about the gold in Sudan, and currently the army and the RSF I have been fighting to have control over the land so that they can be able to extract the gold. And we are seeing the expansion of the RSF having more means to the access of gold, and that means they will have more share of the money in the current conflict, which of course they are selling it to Dubai, to the UAE. So they have got the market for this gold.
Yeah. And then, just staying on that particular topic as it relates to the UAE, what do you then make of this, resolution by the EU, saying that it has adopted this resolution calling for the United Arab Emirates to be held accountable for their alleged involvement, of course. I mean, what's the importance of Parliament, European Parliament, passing firstly this resolution on Sudan, and just from a practicality perspective, what measures can the EU then take to external backers of the conflict, including in this case, as we've been discussing, the UAE?
I think one of the practical measures that they can take is to join the Sudanese government, which have taken the UAE to the ICJ over this alleged or the allegations of complicity in the genocide that is taking place in Sudan, to show that they are not only paying lip service to what they are saying on the statement that they've released. Because one of the issues, one of the things that we can say that the reason why they are not happy with what is happening is because they are not at the receiving end of the extracted gold. Much of the gold that is extracted, more than 70% of it goes to countries such as Libya and Dubai. It does not reach the European Union countries. So they only get around 30 to between 20 to 30% of the gold that is being extracted from Sudan. So that might be one of the drivers for them to take the political posture that they have taken recently. But to show that they indeed stand with the people of Sudan, they have to take more measures by using the existing institutions such as the ICJ, and also by making use of the ICC to make sure that those who are responsible for the mass killings in Sudan are being held accountable and liable for their human violations in Sudan.
Oh, Kenneth, thank you so much for that. It is an interesting one to watch and actually to see if some of those recommendations, from an implementation perspective, will be taken by the EU, taking the UAE as an example to the International Court of Justice, or even exercising the ICC to intervene. But thank you so much for your reflections. Really do appreciate it. That was, of course, Kenneth Kgwadi, a political sciences research fellow at the Middle East Africa Research Institute.
The Morning Reset